Hello and welcome to another beautiful pattern drafting. On today's tutorial, I'm going to be sharing with you how to draft a crisscross blazer. If this is what you like, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up. So let's dive right into today's video. So here on my pattern, I've gone ahead to mark out my basic measurements, which includes my shoulder to bust, my shoulder to waistline. And from my waistline, I measured about 7 inches to get my waistline. And you're going to add about 1 inch because of the blazer is a bit lower than your hip point. So next, I'm going to mark out the basic neckline, and the basic neckline I'm using for this pattern is 3 by 3 inches, and I'll just go ahead to mark and place my curved rule, and I will rule this out. So after I'm done doing this, the next step you want to take is to go ahead to divide your shoulder into 2. So my shoulder is 14 divided by 2, I have 7. At that point, I will go down by 1 inch and I'll place my ruler, and I'm going to draw a slope or shoulder slant at that point. So the next step is to go ahead to find your chest line. To get your chest line is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. Your chest line is also known as your armhole line. So whatever I have, I'm just going to measure it down there just to make sure that my shoulder and my chest line aligns. And I'll place my ruler and draw a straight line. So I'll go ahead and measure from my bust to my chest line. Whatever I have there, this is just to make sure I have a straight line on my chest line. So I'll go ahead to mark the dots and I'll use my ruler to connect, creating a straight line at that point. So I'm going to continue marking this to the end of my pattern this way. So after I'm done doing this, I'm going to divide my armhole into 2 and I'm going to mark. At that point I marked, I'm going to come in by ½ inch, and from there I'm going to mark my bust circumference on my chest line. My bust circumference is 33 inches divided by 4, I have approximately 8.3. Place connect from that point to your armhole and down to your shoulder point. So after I'm done doing that, the next step I'm going to take is to go ahead to mark my dart. So to mark your dart, you're going to mark your nipple to nipple divided by 2. So my nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2, I have 3.5 inches. So from that point, I'm going to go ahead to mark my dart. So go ahead to mark your nipple to nipple all the way down to your pattern. So your nipple to nipple is the distance between 2 of your bust points or your nipple point. So after marking that, you're going to place your ruler and you're going to draw a straight line connecting all those points. Next, you're going to mark ½ inch on both sides of your waist and you're going to connect. So I forgot, for this pattern we are going to make use of a bust dart. So the front length of your pattern might be longer than the back length, because by the time you take out the bust dart, it's going to blend with what you have at the back. So now I'm going to go ahead to mark my bust circumference divided by 4 and add my sewing allowance. At the waistline, mark your waist circumference divided by 4. Go ahead to replace that half inch dart, making it 1 inch, and add your sewing allowance. At the blazer length, go ahead to mark your hip circumference divided by 4 and add ½ inch to it. So now you're going to go ahead to connect your pattern, starting from the bust down to the waist and to the top length. So if you notice, this pattern does not have an under bust, so you don't need your under bust measurement for this particular pattern. So next, you're going to go ahead to cut out your pattern. So if you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, please don't forget to also hit on the subscribe button. So I've gone ahead to cut out my pattern and I transferred all my measurements that I had on one side to the other side of my pattern. So after doing that, the next step you want to take is to mark your bust dart. So my bust dart is 1.5 inches and I'll go ahead to mark that and I'll connect it all the way down to my bust line. So everybody's bust dart differs. The way to find your bust dart is the difference between your front and your back. So if you notice, your front you have bust, while at the back there's no bust. So this is just to contour your pattern so that at the sides of your pattern your dress will be matching with what you have at the front and also at the back. So please, if you don't understand what I said, just leave your question at the comment section. So now to draw out the neckline, I'm just going to use my pencil and I will be doing a freehand sketch. Come up by ½ inch at this point and blend it right down to my armhole. So this is what I have on this point, and at this point at the shoulder, I'm going to measure about 3½ inches and I'll connect. So this is not a constant. So at the center, I'll come down by 1 inch. That is the center of my pattern. So from that point, I'm going to go ahead to connect all the way down to that 1 inch I marked this way. So this is what I have on this point, and I'm just going to go ahead to blend this out more. So now I'll place my rule and I'm going to go ahead to outline this very well. So this is what I have on this part, and after I'm done cutting, I'm going to go ahead to use my marker to rule out this pattern so that it's going to be very visible for you to see. So looking at what I have on the pattern, I'll go ahead and just readjust my neckline a bit so that it will match what I have on the pattern, and I'll blend it in again. So if this pattern was just a crisscross top, this is okay, but since it has like a blazer effect, so we are going to be creating like a little button allowance. So I'm using 1 inch to create this. This is to make sure that it's going to lap very well, and we're going to have a space to add our button at the waist. Now you're going to blend it down to your neckline and you're going to draw it out this way. So after I'm done connecting my pattern, I'm just going to go ahead to use my marker to outline it to make it more visible for you to see. So looking at what we have, there's a cut on the waistline, so you want to outline that also this way down to the button allowance. And after that, you want to go ahead to cut out your bust dart. So I'm just going to cut it out this way and I'll be blending it later. But I'll go ahead to cut out the lower part because you're going to join it back together with the pattern. So, and I'll go ahead to cut the rest of the pattern also. So I went ahead to cut out my dart just to make sure that the bust dart will align first. So later you're going to close up your dart this way, and you're going to be cutting this as one piece with your dart allowance, and then you're going to stitch it up. If you notice at the upper part there is a dart, so now after I'm done doing this, I'm just going to blend in this dart at the lower part of your pattern. So why I blended in the one on top is just to show you that when you're sewing, you're going to sew in your dart. You're not actually going to cut it off. I just had to open it just to make sure I blend in the bust dart. So this is what I have for this part. To cut the other part, you can actually use one pattern to cut it. All you have to do is turn it this way, place on your fabric and cut. But just to make sure that I don't confuse some people, I'm just going to place it on another pattern paper and I'm going to go ahead to cut. So before I go ahead to cut, we are going to extend the neckline. Why? Because there's no sleeve at the back of this dress. It is actually backless. So now I'm going to be extending it by 3 inches at the back, and I'll just tape this down to another pattern paper. So you can use 4 inches or you can use less, but do not use something that is too long. If not, you're actually going to trim it out again. So I'm just going to place extend by 3 inches and rule out my line, and also extend at the other side and I will rule out. So I'm just going to go ahead to cut this out. So after I'm done cutting out on my pattern, this is what I have. So now I'll just go ahead and place it back on a fresh pattern, and I'll be turning it the other way, because if you cut this same side, you're going to have the same pattern all together. So go ahead and place it this way, and you're going to pin it down and trace it out. So before I go ahead to trace out, I'll open up my dart again. Make sure that it's like the normal dart, which I will sew directly probably when you're sewing this dress. So you just want to leave your dart lines open, and now you're going to go ahead to place it and pin it down, and you're going to go ahead to trace this out. So at this point, if you haven't yet subscribed, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, and also follow me on my other YouTube channel where I also do drafting and sewing tutorials. And if you have any question, please don't forget to leave your question at the comment section. So after I'm done cutting out, this is what I have. So you're going to place it over this way. So this is your crisscross top, or the upper part. If you're cutting a crisscross top, actually you can use the upper part. So this is the lower part of it, which is the blazer. You're going to also cut this for the other side. Just flip it and cut just like we did for the front. So for the pocket on top is more like an attachment. I don't think it's really a walt pocket. So let's move down to the back pattern. So you can actually use this to cut out your back pattern. All you have to do is just blend it out, match up the lower part, place and cut. But to make it more easier and understandable, we are going to cut a fresh pattern for the back. So I've gone ahead to cut out all my basic measurements just we did at the front. So the next step I'm going to take is just to go ahead also to mark my nipple to nipple. So for the back pattern, it is actually a bit shorter than what we have at the front. Why? We took out a bust dart. So by the time you blend in your bust dart, you notice that your pattern has shortened at this side. So for my back pattern, I have about 1.5 inches shorter. So after that, I'm just going to go ahead and mark ½ inch just like we did at the front part, and we are going to go ahead to connect our dart legs this way. So after you're done doing this, you want to go ahead and insert your body measurement. At the bust, I'm going to mark the bust circumference divided by 4 and add the sewing allowance. At the waist, mark your waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart to replace and add your sewing allowance. At the lower part, mark your hip circumference divided by 4 and add your sewing allowance. After you're done doing this, go ahead to use your ruler to connect your lines, and at the lower part you can place your ruler this way. So make sure you don't really have a very sharp hip point, because this is actually a blazer. So to make sure that my blazer relax at my back, I'll mark 0.5 inches here, extend it, and then extend at the back. This is to make sure that my blazer is flat at the back, or to make sure your blazer sits well at the back. So for my chest line, I'll come down by ½ inch, and I'll go ahead to connect all the way to the back. So I went up by ½ inch at the armhole side, but when I was cutting out, I went ahead to just cut it out straight. So after cutting this, you're also going to place and cut another side for your back. So, and you can go ahead to sew out your dart or divide your pattern into two. So with this, we have come to the end of today's tutorial. Please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and see you in our next video. Thanks.